Okay. So once again, our course is Introduction to Mobile Android Programming. No? So as what we discussed last time, that Android mobile programming is the process of developing applications for the Android operating system, which is used on mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. So Android is a popular mobile operating system, so developed by Google, that runs on a wide range of devices from different manufacturers. So Android applications can be developed using various programming languages, no, such as Java, Kotlin, and C++. And the Android SDK, or the Software Development Kit, provides developers with the necessary tools, libraries, and APIs to create Android application. So, mobile Android programming involves designing the user interface, implementing functionality, handling user input, and managing application resources such as images, sounds, and data. So, Android applications can be distributed through the Google Play Store, which is the primary marketplace, no, for Android apps. So, in addition to traditional mobile applications, Android programming can also be used to develop other types of software such as games, widgets, and wearable uh, apps. No? So, Androids also provide support for a variety of hardware devices, including sensors, cameras, and Bluetooth. Again, Android is free, open source platform based on the Linux operating system and primarily designed for mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. So Android provide a rich set of tools, no, APIs, and frameworks for mobile app development, making it a popular choice for developers worldwide. One of the essential components of Android development is the Android SDK. So it provides all the necessary tools and resources for developing, testing, and debugging Android application. So the SDK includes various tools such as Android Studio, an integrated development environment or IDE, and the Android emulator, which allows developers to test their applications on virtual Android devices. So Android programming can be done using multiple programming languages, but Java and Kotlin are the most commonly used languages for Android app development. So Kotlin is a newer language that is designed work with Java and offers many features such as null safety, extension functions, and coroutines, making it a most popular choice for Android developments in recent years. So the Android app development process involves several steps, no, including designing the user interface, writing, of course, code, testing, and deployment. So the Android UI, no, is built using XML, and the layout is defined using a variety of UI components such as text view, image view, edit text, and others. And the components are customizable, no, and developers can also create their custom UI components if needed. No? So in addition to the UI, Android applications have a significant number of APIs and libraries that allows developers to implement various features such as networking, local trace or local tracking, camera, and more. So the Android platform also provides support for various hardware devices such as sensors, Bluetooth, NFC, making it easier for developers to incorporate these features into their applications. Again, Android apps can be distributed through various channels such as Google Play Store, which is primary app store for Android developers. No, developers can also distribute their apps through other third-party app stores or directly to their users by sharing APK files. Overall, mobile Android programming offers a powerful platform for developing a wide range of applications for mobile devices. With its rich set of tools and APIs, developers can build highly functional and feature-rich applications that are not limited to smartphones and tablets, but can also be extended to wearable devices like TVs and other smart devices. Overall, mobile programming offers a flexible and powerful platform to developing a wide range of application for mobile devices. No? I'll just want to show you a video presentations on the introductions of the Android programming.
Bucky Roberts, and welcome to your very first tutorial in Android app development. Now, in this tutorial series, what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to assume that you guys have never created an Android app before, but you guys do have some programming experience. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys how to develop Android apps for both the phone and the tablet from the ground up. So that's what we're going to be doing, creating some awesome apps, someone that is totally new to Android app development. However, before I begin, I want to mention this. For those of you who have been following my YouTube channel for a long time, you probably already noticed that I have another Android app development tutorial series, and the reason that I decided to make a brand new one is because that tutorial series, we actually made it a couple years ago, and since then, a lot of the software and tools that you use to develop these apps have been updated. Actually, we have a brand new piece of software called Android Studio, and I'll show you guys how to install that and use it and everything. But the software itself is a lot different than what we used to teach Android development in the past. So again, this tutorial series is pretty much just going to be updated, new, kind of more relevant. So that's why I decided to do that. So anyways, I'm going to be quiet now and let's go ahead and get started. So the very first thing we need is of course the Java JDK. Now I'm guessing that if you guys are watching this, then you already are familiar with Java, at least a little bit, and you probably already have the Java JDK installed on your computer. However, just to make sure that I cover everything 100%, if you don't have the Java JDK already installed on your computer, this is how you get it. And of course, I probably should mention this. Why do we need a Java JDK if we're making Android apps? Well, all Android apps, as well as a lot of the software itself, is made using Java. That's what language we're going to write in primarily to make these Android apps. So, of course, the Java JDK, which stands for the Java Development Kit, is the core foundation that we need before we can even think about making any Android apps. So, the website always changes, but if you go to Google and type in download Java JDK, then the first thing that's always going to pop up is the link to download this Java Development Kit. Now, if you click right here, what we want is this Java Platform JDK right there. However, whenever we click here, we see that we have a lot of Java development kits that are available for download. Alright, so we know that we don't want Linux because I'm not on Linux. We know that we don't want Mac, so we have a couple options here, Windows x86 and Windows 64. Now, the difference between these two is 64 is for the Windows 64-bit version, and the 86 is for the 32-bit version of Windows. So if you don't know what version of Windows you have, go to the Start menu, and where you see Computer right here, right-click it, and then you're going to see a thing called Properties. Whenever you select that, if you look at your system type, it says, okay, 64-bit operating system. So that means I have Windows 64-bit. So whenever I download this, I'm going to choose 64. If yours says 32, then click this one right here. But, of course, you need to accept the agreement first, and then download it. And what it's going to do is it's going to download an executable file, and it's going to take a while, so I'll pause my video. I won't make you watch the whole thing. And we are back. It took about a minute, but now I just download the entire executable. And of course, if you're on Chrome, which you probably should be, highly recommend it, then go to your downloads and you can just click that. However, if you accidentally close out of that, then of course your downloaded files, if you go to your, well, I'll just show you guys. Alright, you can either go to your computer from Windows Explorer and click downloads. That's probably the easiest way, so just do that. So anyways, whatever file you just downloaded, double click it, and then of course, I actually don't know if you could see that. I don't know if my screen recorder showed my system little pop-ups there, but it says, do you want to allow this to access your computer? Yes. Let me close out all this. Alright, so this is really self-explanatory. If you ever downloaded anything before, then it's going to be simple. Just click next, next, and it's going to do all the hard work for you. However, there's one thing, once this is completely done, that you guys need to follow along with. So, again, if you think about skipping this entire tutorial, don't do that because you're going to miss an important step at the end. So wait for this entire thing to la 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 whatever. Alright, and what you want to do is you want to make sure to leave everything in its default location. Because as long as you do that, and as long as you follow along, then whenever you download and install Android Studio, it's not gonna be confused looking at some weird location for anything. So make sure that you keep all the default settings whenever you're running this installer. Alright, so now we have the JDK installed on our computer. However, before we download Android Studio, what we need to do is we need to tell our computer exactly where it is. And that's because later on when we develop, or excuse me, when we download Android Studio, it's going to look for that JDK. So what we need to do is we need to explicitly say, hey computer, this is where the JDK is. So go to your start menu and then click on computer and then make sure you're starting at your hard drive. So in order to get the path to this, as long as you kept everything at default during installation, it's going to be in your program files. And then if you go down to Java, double click that. And what folder you want to click on is actually the JDK. This is the Java runtime environment, the JRE. Don't worry about that. Double click the JDK, and this is actually the path you want. So what you can do now is you can actually right click any of these files, but because it's going to give you the same path, what I'm about to show you guys, but just for consistency, right click this bin and click properties. So again, this is the location that you're looking for right here, the location that your Java development kit is at. So copy that, right click and copy, and now once you have that location, close out of everything because we have to tell our computer, alright, this is where our JDK is. So how do we do that? It's actually pretty simple. If you open your start menu again and right click computer and go to properties, you're going to see a link on the left hand side that says advanced system settings. If you click that, you're going to see this little pop-up right here. Click on the button that says environment variables. So I already have this set up because actually for this tutorial I uninstalled my Java JDK and then I reinstalled it. So, just to show you guys how to do it. But you're probably aren't going to have a variable set up right here. So in order to get that, click new under user variables, and you need to name the variable Java underscore home. Make sure that everything is in capital letters, and then for the variable value, paste in that location of your JDK and hit OK. So what we're essentially doing is we're telling our computer, alright, whenever you need to work with the Java JDK, or the JDK is kind of redundant what I'm saying, but whenever Android Studio is looking for it, then it's going to look in your environment variables and it's going to say, okay, that's where all the crap I need is. So, it's not literally going to say crap, but, now that we have everything compatible and our computer is able to find and work with the Java JDK, it's probably getting annoying that I keep saying that, but whatever. We are now set up and ready to move on to the next step. So thank you guys for watching, and I also want to
Okay, so actually that this will be the way on how we'll be able to install, no? Because it is important for us, as you can see, no, even the environment, is very important to link, no, automatically. Because again, in installing Android Studio naman will be the next, no? Because some steps, no, in installing Android Studio, of course, first is to go to the HTTPS colon forward slash dalawa, then developer.android.com/studio. Then you just simply click the download button to download the latest version of Android Studio for your operating system. So once the download is complete, run the downloadable file to start the installation process. In the first screen, you will be asked, no, to select the components you want to install. Make sure the Android virtual device option is checked, as it will enable you to test your apps on virtual Android devices. And next, choose the installation location and click on the next button. In the following screen, you will be prompted to choose the UI theme for Android Studio. And you can choose the one that suit your preferences. Then you will be asked to review the setting for Android Studio, and you can leave the default setting as they are, or you can customize them according to your preferences. Click on the finish button to start the installation process. Then actually Android Studio will now download and install the necessary components. So once the installation is complete, you can launch Android Studio from the start menu or yung sa Windows natin or application folder naman kapag sa Mac. Okay? Again, kapag nag-install tayo sa Android Studio, kung ang gamit po natin ay Windows, so start menu tayo. Kung Mac naman sa application folder. So when you launch Android Studio for the first time, you will be prompted to download additional components such as SDKs and system images. So you just simply follow the prompts to download and install these components. And finally, you will be asked to create a new project or import an existing one. Then right after that, syempre, you have successfully installed Android Studio and you are ready to start building Android apps. So I just want to show you a video presentation on how you'll be able to install the Android Studio.
Alright guys, so the next thing we have to do is download Android Studio. Now, the website is most likely going to change because they always do. However, if you just type in download Android Studio, it's always going to be the first thing that pops up. So click this, and of course, this is the program that allows you to write Android applications. Now, the cool thing about this is that unlike the old program that you used to use, this was made just for writing Android apps, and it has everything you need built in. So this is the program where we actually write the code, and this is the program where all these little emulators, which are pretty much like virtual phones that you can test on, those are built into the entire like layout designer, and I'll teach you guys how to use that later on. But it's basically a graphical way to lay out your Android apps that's built in as well. It's incredibly awesome, incredibly cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So of course, click that, agree to whatever. Let me read this real quick. Oh, pretty cool. All right, download this. And it's actually probably going to take a little bit to download because it's almost a gigabyte. It might be a gigabyte by the time you download it. But anyways, I'll come back to you guys when this is done. Alright, so it took a while, but I finally have it download this executable file right here. And I want to mention this real quick before I move on. If anyone was lazy and decided to skip my last tutorial, what we did is we set up the JDK to be compatible with Android Studio. So if you did do that and skip everything, then follow this direction right here. But for those of you guys who stuck with me, then you guys are good to go because we already did that step. So anyways, actually I'm going to close out of that. We don't need this browser anymore. However, if we go to our downloaded files, then we see that we now have this Android Studio bundle. So this, of course, is the installer. So double click that. Alright, so anything that pops up, just say yes. We trust them. We trust Google. Next. And leave. Pretty much you're going to leave all of these as the defaults. Agree. Agree. Do I want to install in the default location? Yes. Recommended. Looks good. That looks good as well. Alright, so it says it is complete. Installation complete. Setup was completed successfully. Sweet. Go ahead and click next. And I actually don't want to start this up right yet because what I want to do is I'm going to go to my start menu right here and I'm going to go to all programs. And now we can see after we have everything downloaded and installed, we're going to have a folder called Android Studio. So if I click that, I'm going to see this Android Studio program. I'm going to right click it and send it to desktop. So that way I have a Android Studio icon on my desktop because we're going to be using it a lot now. So the first time I open this, I'm going to right click and we're going to choose Run as Administrator. Now the very first time you open it, this thing is going to pop up right here and it's going to download all the extra components that it needs, but don't worry, this is only a one-time thing the very first time to set everything up. Alright, so all those additional components look like everything is good to go, so click Finish. Alright, so this is the welcome screen to Android Studio. From here, what we can do is we can actually start a brand new project. However, before we get started, there is one last thing that we need to do. And this isn't absolutely necessary, but it's going to save you guys a ton of headaches in the future. If you go down to Configure right here, you're going to see something called SDK Manager. And if this is grayed out or you can't select it for some reason, make sure that you close out of this and right click and run as administrator, and then it's going to be available. So anyways, click this.
Okay, don't forget not to do that, no? Right click, then run as administrator, no? It's just that simply double click, no? Because maybe your account be able to be a user. So as much as possible, especially when running an application, especially Android, be sure that you are running this application through as an administrator, I mean your account.
Right here, and what's going to happen is you're going to have a new pop-up window that appears. Now, this basically allows you to download additional packages or additional code that you're going to use whenever you're developing apps. As you can see, it says install 9 packages, and the ones that are checked are actually the ones that we're going to want to install. So if you click this button right here, and of course we need to accept the license and install, then what it's going to do is it's going to install these additional packages. Alright guys, so once you have all the optional packages installed, what you can do is just close out of Android SDK Manager, and it's also a better idea to close the Android Studio altogether, and now right click it and run it as administrator to open it again. And the reason that you want
Right after the installation of an Android applications, now what we're going to do is to setting up your project. No? So again, right after installation of SDK, Java, and Android Studio, this will be the time for you to start or setting up your project. So number one, you need to launch Android Studio and click a start a new Android Studio project on the main screen. So in the new project windows, no, you need to enter the application name and package name. No, the package name should be unique to your application and should follow the Java naming conventions. Okay? Then right after that, choose the minimum SDK versions that your app will support. And this will determine the minimum version of Android that your app can run on. It is recommended to choose a version that support most of the devices. No? Let's say, for example, what will be the available device at the market. No? Then choose the type of project you want to create. Because there are various types such as empty activity, basic activity, and full screen activity. Choose one that best fits your needs. No? Then after that, click on Finish to create your project. So Android Studio will create your projects and load it in the editor. Now, you can see your project structure in the project pane. No? It contains all the files and directories of your project. In the app, no, directory, you can find the rest, the word RES, no, directory, which contains all the resources, no, used by your application, such as layout files, no, images, and values. In the Java directory, no, you can find the main activity file, no, main activity wherein M at saka A is capitalized, no, which is the main activity of your application. So an activity is a screen that user interacts with. Then in the manifest directory, you can find the Android manifest.xml file, now, which contains information about your application, such as the name, icon, permissions, and activities. And you can now start developing your application. So to run your app, click the Run button in the toolbar, or just simply press Shift plus F10, and you can choose the device or emulator to run your app. Then, of course, you have set up already your project in Android Studio and are ready to start the developing your application. I just want to show you again a presentation on what I'm talking about earlier. Okay, starting a project.
Alright guys, welcome back to another video. And in this tutorial, what I want to do is I just want to make sure that everyone's Android Studio is set up and working correctly. And the best way to do this is actually build a really simple, basic Android Studio project and run it. And if we get any errors, if we come across any issues, I'll show you guys how to fix them as well. So the first thing that you always do whenever you create a new project is just click Start a New Android Studio Project. You guys probably could figure that out. Now I'll talk you guys through this real quick, but again, this is just an example to make sure that everything is working correctly. So if I am kind of running over everything kind of quick, or if you don't fully understand everything that I'm doing, don't worry, we're going to be coming back to everything, cover it in detail later on. But again, let me explain just real quick what's going on. Now this, of course, the application name is not only the project name, so it's not only, whenever you're browsing your computer, you can identify which project you're working on, but this application name is actually the name of the app whenever you put it in the Google Play Store. So again, for this one, we can just keep the default name because this is, like I said, a really stupid example, just to make sure everything's working. We're not actually going to be selling this. However, when you do develop an app that you are eventually going to sell, take some time and think of a good application name because it does matter. Now, the company domain, again, yours is probably going to be like, I don't know what it was to start with, probably like example.org or example.com or something. But the company domain is how you identify each application. Now, as you can see, whenever you type in a domain name, okay, come on, cursor, the new Boston.com, .cinnamon, alright, .com, you see that the package name fills in automatically, and this is called a reverse domain notation. So whenever you're going to a website, you would type the name followed by .com. The package name is com.thenewboston. The application name. So again, this is just an identifier to say, okay, there's a lot of apps named My Application on the Google Play Store. How do we know which one is Bucky's? Well, that's the one with the New Boston. So again, this is just the name of your app, your website, and then once you fill in both those things, it fills in the rest of the crap for you. So, got like phlegm in my throat. So click Next, and this is actually an easy screen to understand. It says, okay, you're developing an app for the phone and tablet. This is all we're going to be doing for this tutorial series. I'm not going to show you guys how to develop anything for the TV or wear. Now, wear is pretty much anything that you can wear on your body. Like, I don't know if they have like glasses yet, but this is like smartwatches and stuff like that. So again, this tutorial series is just going to cover how to make apps for the phone and tablet. So select that, and also I probably should mention this. The minimum SDK, you probably either want to put 8 or whatever the default is. Now, this is well, you guys know like the different versions of Android that came out. Of course, the later ones are the newest ones, but the reason that you just don't want to go ahead and develop for the latest one is because a bunch of people still have these older versions. So if you say, okay, well, I got, I don't know, maybe you got KitKat, so that's great, but whenever you put your app on the Google Play Store, check this out. It's only going to run on 25% of the devices. So if you go all the way back to Froyo, this was a really popular SDK. Whenever you develop apps for this, then it's going to run on pretty much all devices unless someone has like an old ancient phone. Now, if you're like, okay, Well, with that logic and understanding, let me just go ahead back to the original API right there, and I should be good to go. Well, you don't want to do that either because whenever you make an app that's compatible with all these ancient operating systems, it's going to involve a lot more code and a lot more testing, and it's going to be pretty much pointless because no one even has these anyways. So again, a good median for this is to go to API 8 at the time of this recording. Again, this is probably gonna change as time goes on, but right now I would stick with API 8, and this makes sure that you cover pretty much every device that anyone would have, and you don't have to write any useless code. So let me adjust in my seat a little bit here. So now our next choice is okay, add an activity to mobile. So we probably should understand what the heck is an activity. Of course, this is like the 2 second tutorial, so I'm just gonna explain it really simple. Ugh. Okay, probably should edit that out. I'll probably just leave it in. Too lazy. All right. So right now, just think of an activity as a screen. So if you're making an app for, I don't know, a website, the home screen would be its own activity. The about section would be another activity. So again, it's a little more complex than that, but for now, just think of an activity as a screen on your app or a view. So for this demonstration, we're just going to have blank activity. So what this is going to do is it's going to set up a template app with one screen on it, perfect for testing. So now, of course, we need to give our activity a name. Why do we need to give our activity a name? Well, that's just because whenever you're making an app with a bunch of different screens, you obviously need a way to identify all of them because if you want to say, okay, switch to the home screen, switch to the, I don't know, my profile screen. Well, this is just how your app is going to identify each one and know what's going on. And we'll talk about the layout and all these different things later on. The layout is pretty much how things are positioned on the screen, and all this other stuff is kind of that's not the point of this tutorial. We'll cover that later on. But for now, just remember that this main screen is called main activity. Simple enough, and finish.
Wala pa sir.
So right after, of course, doing that, our, based on our discussion, the end resolution now project, a simple application. What we're going to do first to open Android Studio, as what we did earlier, and create a new project by following the steps. No? Number one, in the main activity file, a while ago, this demonstrate on how you'll be able to save a file in the main activity. And you will find a method called onCreate. And this is called what, or this is called when the activity is created. So in the onCreate method, you need to add the code. Ano yung code natin? Set content view opening close parentheses r that layout that activity underscore main close parentheses semicolon. So the line of code sets the layout of the activity to activity underscore main.xml. And next, of course, create a new layout file called activity underscore main.xml by right-clicking on the rest layout directory and selecting new, then layout resource file. No? Then in the activity main.xml file, you need to add a text view element with the code. No? So what will be the code? Of course, the opening tag, no, text view. Then Android colon ID is equal to a at sign plus ID slash hello world, no? Because most commonly we are displaying hello world in all programming applications, no? And the layout width, layout height, and of course the Android colon text is equal to hello world. Then the closing tag slash, then the for the HTML, no, for the XML rather. And this will display the text hello world, no, in the center of the screen. Now, you need to click the run button in the toolbar or press shift plus F10 as what I mentioned earlier to run your app. So choose the device or emulator to run your app on. So if you don't have a device or emulator set up, you can create one, no, by clicking on the create new virtual device button. Let's say, for example, if you do not connect, no, your mobile device into your computer, you could able naman to create an emulator setup. No, you can create one by clicking on the create new virtual device button. So once the app is installed on the device or emulator, you should see the text hello world display on the screen. You have successfully run your first Android application in Android Studio, and you can now experiment with changing the text and layout to create your own applications. No, so I'll just want to play a sample app. No,
All right, guys. So after Android Studio is finish setting up and preparing your project, you're going to have something that looks like this. And if you have an error right now, then I know what error that you're getting, so I'm going to show you guys how to fix that in just a second. But for now, I just want to warn you guys, even though it looks kind of overwhelming, trust me, this is set up perfectly for making apps in about 7 tutorials or something. Once we cover the entire interface, this is going to feel just like home, and all the stuff that feels overwhelming right now is actually going to, you're probably going to find it very useful. But for now, I'm going to mention a couple things that are going to make your life a whole lot easier. The first thing is, if you ever want to access that SDK manager from here, then what you do is you go up to this little thing. It kind of looks like the little, I think his name's Andy the Android. It looks like he's sitting in this bucket with a down arrow, but this is the Android SDK manager. So click that. And again, you don't have to close out of your entire project to open up the SDK manager anymore. And I actually want to show you guys one more package that I forgot to tell you guys to install later on. I mean earlier. So if you open up the SDK manager and you scroll all the way down, then make sure that you have this package installed right here. It's the Intel x86 emulator accelerator. And again, I installed it already, but it takes like 2 seconds to install. But what this is basically whenever we develop these sample apps, what we're going to do is we're going to run those on pretty much emulators, or they're pretty much like little virtual phones that we can use for testing. And those are kind of slow. So that package just helps speed up the entire process and makes it run a little bit smoother and faster. So if you guys wanted to know what that was, there you go. If you didn't, well, sorry for wasting your time. But that's how you get to the Android SDK Manager from here. Now, another thing that I want to do is mention this. A lot of you guys probably have an error that popped up that says, okay, I can't find the Android SDK, or I don't know where the Java JDK is. You got to help me out because Android Studio won't run how it's configured right now. So if Android Studio has a problem finding either of those things, then go to File and go to Project Structure. And then from here it says, okay, the Android SDK location is where. And actually, if you see like, I think if you get an error, it shows like some red text or something. But in order to navigate to it, if it's not set up correctly, just click these three little dots on the right hand side, and then you can say, okay, you obviously aren't looking in the right place. This is where I downloaded my Android SDK. And the same thing with a Java Development Kit or the JDK. Make sure that the directory ends with the JDK in your version number, and make sure that the Android SDK ends with SDK. So again, if you downloaded it to a different directory than I did in the example, then you're going to have these errors. So that is where you fix them, depending on wherever you downloaded it. So mine is correct, so I'm just going to close out of that. And I probably should mention this as well. Alright, so just so every user is looking at the same thing, I'm going to change the app theme right here because this typically changes from user to user. So make sure, I'll show you guys, if you click on app theme right here, then the theme is pretty much the overall look and feel of your app. So switch yours to Material Light and click OK. And as you can see, your interface changes a little bit. Again, this is just so everyone is looking at the same thing, and you're not watching this tutorial and are like, okay, mine looks different than yours, and that's weird. Now, the last thing I want to mention before we actually run this is this. Right now, whenever I'm teaching these tutorials, you see that we have minimal screen size, and that's just because I wanted to make the window small enough where people with smaller monitors can see the videos clearly. Well, the problem with this is the screen, whenever we're developing this app, it looks kind of small. So in order to get rid of this phone body, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the settings, and you see it says include device frame. I'm going to uncheck that. So again, if you ever like developing and looking at the phone itself, maybe it gives you a better idea of what the application is going to look like, then do that. However, just to make sure that these tutorials are a little bit more clear, I'm going to get rid of that, and then we're going to see the interface a little more clearly. So once we're ready to run our app and test everything out, this is what I want you to do. Go up to Tools and select Android AVD Manager. Now, if you don't want to go through all those steps, you can also click this little button right here. This is just a shortcut to the AVD Manager. And the AVD Manager stands for Android Virtual Device Manager. So this, let me make this a little bit more clear. Alright, so this is where you manage all of your virtual devices. And again, a virtual device is just a little simulator, a little testing phone that you can make so you don't have to take an actual Android phone and plug it in your computer whenever you're developing apps and you want to test them out. So by default, whenever you download and install Android Studio, it comes with one virtual device. This is the Nexus 5. So that's what simulator phone comes built with it. But of course, if you ever want to make a new one, you just create virtual device by clicking that button down there. And you can actually create little simulator TVs and whatnot. But I'll talk you guys through how to create a virtual device. I don't know, maybe you want to create a same virtual device as the phone that you actually own. But for now, you can just use this one right here. Now, the reason that I'm not going to use this one and the reason that I built another one called Bucky's phone is something that you don't have to worry about. It's actually because whenever I'm recording these tutorials and I'm running this little simulator, it takes up a lot of space and it doesn't really show that great on my like whenever I'm making tutorials. So that's why I made Bucky's phone. It's pretty much the same thing except I made it a lot smaller so it shows up better in my tutorials. But anyways, what you want to do is you want to click this little green button right by Nexus 5. I'm going to click mine called Bucky's phone, and this is going to launch, as you can see right here, the virtual device, which is pretty much just a simulator of a phone. Now, the first time you run this, it's going to take a long time to boot up because what it pretty much represents is you're buying a brand new phone, so it has to start it up for the very first time. And the reason that this takes so long is if you think about it, what it's actually doing is it's building an entirely new operating system or an entirely new device within your computer. So it has to build a new phone with a new operating system that can run new apps. So that's why the entire build process in, to get it up and running takes a little bit longer than you may like. So once your virtual device is up and running, and yours may look a little different than mine because I did run mine before, but to you it may simulate opening a brand new phone. So it's going to be like, welcome to Android, you're going to have to press OK, whatever. But anyways, you just click OK a bunch of times and then you're going to get to this screen right here. So this is the unlock screen, and of course, if you are used to an iPhone or something, the unlocking process is a little bit different than it is on Android. So just click and drag up, and that's going to unlock your phone. And as you can see, it's just like a normal phone. You can even browse the internet from here. But what we are worried about is running our application. So let's hop over back to Android Studio, and I'm just going to close out of this. But what you want to do is you want to go up to this little button right here, and whenever you hover over it, it says Run App. So click that little green triangle, and what this is going to do is it's going to build your app for you, and it's actually going to give us one more option, I believe. Yep, right here. So it says, okay, we're building your app. Where do you want to test it out? So since we already have this emulator running right there, make sure that your radio button is checked, choose the running device, and of course you're probably only going to have one running, so you can just click OK. So what this is going to do is it's going to build it and it's going to launch it in our little simulator phone. So it takes a little bit of time, but don't worry, that's normal. But eventually, as you can see, what happens is it finally launches, and that's actually pretty cool that you don't have to actually go click on app and open it or anything. It just launches right for you. Pretty sweet. So we see that our application says my application, hello world, probably the coolest app ever invented. We could probably put this on Google Play right now and make at least like $10 million. But of course, what we want to do is actually jazz this up a little bit more before we put this bad boy for sale. So that is the process of how to build a very simple app and test everything out. Again, my guess is that since everyone's system is set up a little bit differently, if things don't run completely smoothly for you or if you get any bugs or errors, please go to my forum, post your questions, and there are a lot of people willing and actually wanting to answer your questions for you because whenever they answer someone's questions on the forum, they actually get these things called points. So you are encouraged to ask questions because they probably want questions to help you out with. But anyways, if you have any problems, that's what you do. Thank you guys for watching. In the next tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you guys something else that is definitely awesome. So I'll see you then.